Hi everybody, are you the planner when it comes to your travel? If you are and you want a little help with planning all the details around a cruise, stay with me. If you are not the planner in the family, just go ahead and stop this video right now and go do something fun because you won't like any of what I have to say.
All right then.
But for the rest of you, cruising can be a little bit overwhelming when it comes to all the details that you have to put together. It's not just booking the cruise, it's dealing with dining reservations and flights and hotel and all of that. So with that said, stay with me. I am Leah, that was Doug, and he's off watching TV now, and we are Go Travel Life. I want to share with you a tool that I use to keep track of all of my planning for our cruises. But later in the video, I am going to show you a tool that I am trying out. It doesn't do everything that I need it to do today, but I want to show it to you because I think it has potential. As you may or may not know, a simple, straightforward cruise might be just fine. You don't need all this extra planning. But in many cases, there's multiple ports. You've got to get flights in and out of the cities where you're coming into. You may have hotel stays before and after. You might have special transportation that you've got to figure out. In addition to that, all the rest of the stuff on that particular cruise needs to be booked, whether it's shore excursions or dining or what have you. So I want to just show you how I keep it all in order. I'm going to share the template of that, and that'll be posted out to our document share when this video is finished. But first of all, you have to decide where are you going to cruise, where are you going to go, when do you want to go, what's your budget, what's the places you want to visit. And for that, we always start off with Cruise Plum. I'm sure you've heard of this, so it's cruiseplum.com. And that particular site is one of the most powerful that we've seen that allows you to find your perfect cruise. There are a ton of videos on this, so I am not going to do an incredibly deep dive. But I do want to at least show you at a high level if you have an idea of where you might want to go, when you might want to go, and what budget you're willing to spend, you can pretty easily start narrowing down your options. So this is cruiseplum.com. We are doing a standard search and tell it how many passengers you have, what country you reside in. We're going to do one row per cruise to see all the cabins just because I think the screen will be a little cleaner, but you can get as creative as you want with this and it will prepare our list of cruisers. Now, one of the things we do, we figure out where we want to go and when we want to go. So we know that in 2027, we want to be outside of school holiday season. So we're going to look at September. We know that we've got about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to play with. So we're going to indicate that here. And as you notice up at the top, we're still at 59 options. Now we want to tell it where. That time of year is an excellent time for Europe. It's a little bit shoulder season. We're going to look at Northern Europe. And now we are narrowed down to 4 options. As you can see, we are shown the name of the ship, we're shown the different types of rooms, we're shown an estimate of the cabin. So let's just select one of these and drill down a little bit. So this is on Holland America New Statendam. It's 28 days long. Look at all of this information. It's great. It'll show you from the cheapest category cabin to the most expensive, but one of the things that's super valuable is the per person per day, that very last row there, so you can get an idea, you know, what's your budget and what can you handle. The other thing this shows you is just fare history for these different rooms. Like this one has not changed much. And as you look at the different cruise options, back a page, I mean, this is when you can kind of get an idea of anything that's changed. Next up is the itinerary. I mean, this is an amazing itinerary. Look at how many ports are here. Fantastic, fantastic trip to be able to deeply explore this area of the world. The next section, this is super helpful as well, is the ship info. Like, how old is this ship? What class is it? Is there laundry on board, or do they do laundry for you? And they've got some specifics on suite information. What is on board? It's just an incredibly powerful tool. You can use this for, I mean, as deep information as you want. You can exclude ports. You can say, hey, I want to make sure wherever I'm going includes a particular port. Again, if you've not used this tool, make sure to take a moment and look at some YouTube videos where you can get a deep dive into this, but fabulous, fabulous tool. And this would be a good time to go ahead and get that formal quote from your travel advisor and have them look for any additional benefits such as American Express Platinum or AARP bennies. All right, so now you've got your cruise booked, you've got your deposit made, and it is time to start the real work. So my current solution is an Excel spreadsheet. Please don't roll your eyes. I know that sounds old school. However, it has everything in this file that I need to keep track of what I need to do. So what I'd like to do, it's a working copy basically until the day we leave. And what I'd like to do is sort of walk you through what I track in each of these areas. So first of all, I lay out the dates, day of week, very important when you're on a cruise. If you've ever gotten into a port and didn't realize you were going to be there on a Sunday in Spain when everything's closed, you know, it's good to know. If there are holidays that are happening, it's good to highlight those and make sure that you know that on that particular day there's things that might not be open. I have our port name. I have the times that we're going to be in port. This includes, by the way, sea days, because there are sometimes we have things scheduled on sea days that is outside of the ship's control, such as a cruise critic meet and greet, right? This is where you track those. Second, I will insert days in the front of and back of the cruise to accommodate for flights into our port, pre-tip hotel stays, and the same for post planning. So the hotel afterward if we're staying overnight, and flights home. All details will be entered as I book flights, hotels, and any activities that we participate in before we board. You'll note that I have indicators for dining reservations and the time that we booked it, what type of currency is needed in each port, and if the ship is to be docked or tendered, which this is very important to know if you are booking your own excursions to allow for time for tendering. That is the base of the file, and once that's done, it's now time to start doing the fun stuff. So the next thing I do is I set up a Google Flight alert for the flights that we need, whether that is one way to a particular city or whether that is round trip before and after a cruise. Again, lots of videos out here on Google Flights, but I'll just show you a really quick sample of how we do it. Setting up a Google Flight tracker is pretty simple. If you go to google.com/travel flights, and by the way, I have this link in the file, but you'll basically set up your city pair. You need to know if you're round trip. In this case, we are, but many times it's one way. We're taking the ship back to another port, so just select where you need to go. We need to go to Fort Lauderdale, and I set based on when I want to be, how much time I want to be there before the cruise and after departure. So select your dates. Done. Let it do the initial search. And by the way, as I said, there's plenty of deep dive. You can really geek out on this data here. So plenty of deep dives on this particular tool. I'm just showing you high level. But this is what I do. First of all, I know there's non-stops from Phoenix to Fort Lauderdale, so I'm going to stick with that. Especially in January, it can get a little snarly with snow in other parts of the country backing things up. So I want a direct flight. It'll give me the options. I can take a look at each of these times, what's available on the flight itself. But this right here, this track prices, you can turn this on. Just turn it on. And then you will get an email. You can also just say, I want to see all prices anytime for these particular city pairs. I don't usually do that because I'm pretty set on my date. And then two other real quick things I'll show you. This first one is a date grid. This will show you departure time and when you want to come home. You can see like this particular day, if I left on the Thursday, on New Year's Day, the flights are pretty much less expensive than the next day, of course. So play with this. This will show you better days to travel if your plans are adjustable. And then this price graph will give you like a history of what the prices have been over the last couple months. So just helps you with looking at whether you think there's going to be another drop or not. Anyway, but get this set up, you'll get an email, and for us, we jump on a deal when we see that it's available. Next up is hotels, usually before and potentially after the cruise if you're not going straight to the airport. I like to use TripIdvisor.com. Most likely you've heard of this one as well, but I love the fact that I can put in where I'm going, the dates, and it will help me look at all the rated and ranked hotels in that area. Another thing that's really important, I will most likely not book the hotel until after I've booked the flights, unless I've gotten something fully cancelable. But we've run into situations before, such as Taylor Swift was going to be in Australia when we were there, and the demand for hotel rooms was crazy. So sometimes I will go ahead and grab the hotels that I need, make sure it has a good policy for cancellation and or modification of dates, just so that I have them down, and then make changes accordingly once I get the flights booked. TripIdvisor.com is the site I use to research hotels. You can also book excursions through here as well, as I've mentioned, but they are owned by Viator. They're the same company, but sometimes you will find different things here. Anyway, so we know that we are going to Fort Lauderdale. So if I input that, you'll see Florida pops up, and I'm specifically looking for hotels right now. So I'm going to let it know that I'm looking for that. I have input the dates for me, if that flight works out, flying in on Friday the 2nd and checking out on the 4th, because that's when I'm going to be boarding the ship. You can change the dates here, get those where you want them. And it's going to show you a really nice map and listing of the hotels that are in the area. You can move this up a little bit. If you have cruised out of Fort Lauderdale, most of the cruise ships come right here. And just make sure you validate with your cruise line the address of the port that you're going to, but it's I know for Fort Lauderdale, it's in this vicinity. And then you can, right now these are sorted by best value. You can sort them by traveler rankings, prices, distance to the city center, which doesn't really matter in this case. But one of the things that's super powerful about TripAdvisor, they've been around a long time. I mean, one of the things they tout is they've got over 1 billion reviews. And yes, they recap them with AI for you if that's more helpful, or you can just come down to all reviews and read through these. One of the things that I do is I will type in the word cruise here, and anyone who has mentioned cruise in their review, whether before the cruise port or near the cruise port, something like that, you'll see those reviews. So it kind of gives you an idea, how convenient is this to the cruise port. What I end up doing is I will save the hotels that I think are interesting. There's a little heart up here. You can save it, and you'll see I have several saved trips. I can create a new trip down here based upon this particular cruise, or I can add it to an existing booking. But what I do is I save the ones while I'm researching, and then as long as there isn't some huge event happening in town where I may have to book early, I will just save these until after I get the flights booked, and then I will come back in here and rebook or book the hotels for travel. The next piece that I look at after flights, hotels, such are booked, is looking at how am I going to get from point A to point B. So once I've gotten off the plane, where's my hotel? Can I take a train, such as in Amsterdam, down to the Rotterdam hotel and then port? Making sure that you have those transportation options. Some of them are more complicated, of course. If you're flying into Tahiti, you can get on the ship there, but when you get off, if you're then going over to Moorea, well, then there's a ferry involved. So making sure that you indicate your transportation instructions once you get off the flight, know the train times, all that type of thing. For example, flying into Gatwick and going out to the Southampton port, it's a pretty easy train ride, and a little bit of a walk to the hotel after that. So making sure that you consider those transportation options is very key. Next up is excursions, and I will say this is probably the one that takes the longest amount of time, especially if you're going on a port-intensive cruise. But what I do in my file is I indicate whether we have an excursion booked, who's it through. It might be through the ship, it might be through someone else, of course. And I try to put some details in there, such as the starting times, the ending times, how much does it cost, how long is it supposed to last, and then any detail that would be pertinent that I might want to bring, because sometimes, like I said, you get to your room and there's an excursion ticket or not. Sometimes it's now on your phone, and you don't have the detail that you were supposed to bring a sack lunch or something, right? There'll be something crazy there. I make sure that we always check what the ship offers first, especially if we have shore excursion credit that we need to use, of course. And I'm very careful to go through and look at ports where it would be really difficult to not do a ship excursion. And my example would be Great Barrier Reef in certain ports in Australia. You wouldn't have enough time to take the tender boat over to the port, go to a private vendor, and go to Great Barrier Reef. It would be tight. Instead, the ship offers excursions that literally pick you up. Their boat comes up to the ship and picks you up. So we're careful about those. We make sure we look at the ones where we kind of have to do something on the ship. It might be that there's limited time in port as well, so just take that into consideration. What'sinport.com is what I use to research what is nearby in the port. If you know where you're going, in our case, I know we have a stop in Barbados, so I'm going to start there. It gives you this port guide, which is really helpful. And yes, there are some pop-ups on this. It is an older, not very pretty site. Anyway, but you will get information. How far is the port from the city center, what it typically costs, what's in the cruise terminal. There's printable maps, although most people just use Google Maps if they're on site. They're going to give you some history about the location. They're going to talk about tours, which I don't normally book tours through this, but it's good to know like what's nearby. Harrison's Cave, the Botanical Gardens. Down here at the bottom, you'll get shopping and food. They'll also tell you the currency of that particular port, and that in this case, US dollars are widely accepted in this particular location, but they do have their own money. And then the language that is spoken. So we found this to be super helpful to kind of start here, get a feel for, is this one of those ports that's in an industrial area and you're not even allowed to walk? Or is it something like this where you can, walk off the ship, grab a taxi and get somewhere? So this is a starting point for starting to research our excursions. Okay, so now that we have looked at our ports, we know where we have to book something specifically through the ship. We've probably spent our onboard credit for shore excursions, and we've looked at what's in port, so we know what the port is like, so I can figure out if I can actually do something on my own here. But then we dive into sites like this one, Viator.com. Another one that we use is, we can use TripAdvisor for this as well, but they're owned by the same company. But you do see different excursions, by the way. The other site we use is Get Your Guide for these things. So we know we're going to Barbados. We know we're going to be there on the 5th of January. And then I will be given a list of what there is to do in this port. Just a couple things here. Again, you can do a much deeper dive on your own. How many people you have in your party. I like to use these filters. So I'm specific about if I know my port time, I need something that starts before noon or afternoon. I'm going to say afternoon, and I only have 1 to 4 hours. It is going to narrow these down a little bit for me. There's still a lot at 58. It's sorted by featured, but you can also sort it by price. You can sort by traveler rating. But this is a great spot. I mean, really pay attention to the reviews. I mean, look at this, 870 people and a score of 4.8. You're seeing turtle and shipwreck snorkel adventure. But anyway, we use this to really dig into the sites. You can also, if you do book any of these or you want to save them to look at later, you've got a spot. You can save these to a trip. So that you can easily get back to what you researched. I will tell you many times, Doug will have up what's in port, and he's looking at, how accessible is it, easy to get around? Can we do something on our own? Do we need to have a tour, or is there something that's must-see in this port? And I have Viator up and giving him the different options and pricing and, all the different reviews and people's commentary. So it's kind of a teamwork effort on this one. But it's a great way to look at what there is to do at a specific location. So you may wonder why I haven't talked about shoreexcursions.com, which is also a site that I know many people use. There's a couple reasons. First and foremost, I'm not a huge fan of their cancellation policy. It is 2 weeks before a shore excursion. You can buy their cancellation insurance, and I believe the current rate is like $8 per excursion, but it only covers specific reasons. So if you get sick or it isn't a cancel for any reason policy. When I compare that to TripAdvisor or Viator, there are still many vendors that allow me to cancel 24 hours in advance, as well as on Viator, TripAdvisor, I have the option to reserve now and pay later, versus Shore Excursion requires full payment up front. And I'm just not a fan of those policies. So we have not been using them to do our Shore Excursion research or bookings. Another really helpful website, they also have an app, by the way. This is kind of handy to have during travel, but cruisemapper.com. Cruisemapper basically tells you where are all the cruise ships around the world. You can hover over these and see who's where. Or in my case, I want to know on boarding day on January 4th out of Fort Lauderdale, how many ships are going to be in port. So I can type in Fort Lauderdale and it's going to say, look for cruise ships or ports. I'm going to select the port, and yes, there are some pop-ups. We're going to cancel that. All right, so here we go. This is Fort Lauderdale, and it gives me a map of the port. I can see today's date. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to January of 2026 and look at the schedule. I know I am boarding on the 4th, which is a Sunday. And wow, look at all the ships that are going to be departing on January 4th are in port that day. So yes, that's going to be a busy day at the Fort Lauderdale port. You can look up any port on your itinerary. This is helpful if you're going to like the Caribbean and your popular spots over Christmas as an example to see how many ships are going to be there. You can deep dive on each of these to see what their itineraries are as well, but I think Cruise Plum is going to be your smarter move on actually researching where you want to go. But anyway, this is helpful for knowing who is where when you are planning your travel. Next up is dining, and this one there's some gotchas here. First of all, some cruise fares will include a certain number of specialty dinings. You really need to make sure that your travel agent or you've worked directly with the line that you understand what is included in your fare. And the next thing you need to ask is how far in advance can I reserve it? Many times that is based upon the type of room that you booked. It could be based upon your level of loyalty status with the line as well. So I make sure that I've indicated on my spreadsheet like what days that I actually want to do specialty dining, so that when it opens up for me in particular, that I can get in, make the reservations I want for private table or sharing table or whatever, the time that I actually can reserve booking. Some cruise lines have very good apps that will track that for you, so when you're on board you can see that. Other lines, like Oceania, you get a card the night before reminding that you have a dinner reservation. So I mean, you'll get it, but it's a little more kludgy than others. Some lines, like Azamara, don't let you book any specialty dining in advance at all. So just knowing that and making sure that you've got, whether on your sheet, indicated when you want to get those reservations, so when you board, it's straightforward for you to be able to get those. A quick note on onboard credit, or OBC. Some cruise lines let you spend what you have allocated in advance of the cruise. So for example, I have $1,000 of credit on a 3-week celebrity cruise. I am able to pre-book excursions and pay for them with my onboard credit. Holland, on the other hand, unless it's specific shore excursion credit, doesn't let you do that. So OBC is OBC and is meant to be spent on board. So just make sure when you're booking that you understand when you're able to use that onboard credit and what you can use it for either before or during the cruise. And lastly, what's refundable, what's not refundable. All of that indicated on the spreadsheet as well. I also, you may have seen this, I use color coding. If I have color coding still on a line, that means that day's not done yet. There's something that's not finished. And until I complete everything on that particular line and have all of our details input, then I will make it clear and save the file. Next up, and hopefully this doesn't drive too many of you crazy because I'm going to print some stuff. But I do take along some important documents that I feel like you need to have with you. One is we have an Allianz global policy. I have some of the T's and C's that kind of have the instructions on who you're supposed to call, maybe some specifics on what's covered and what's not, just to make sure that I have that handy. We cannot always get to the app if there's issues. The second is, this is the credit card, travel insurance. These move from cruise to cruise, file to file, once, like the Allianz policy is annual. So that just continues to get moved to the next cruise if we haven't had to use that policy. Same with the credit card travel insurance that you come with. There's a lot of gotchas in these, as you all know. So it's good to have it with you. It's good to know, when do I have to call? When do I have to pre-register something with them in case there is a problem while you're traveling? I like to have that core document with me so I can get to it if something terrible has happened. And with our last trip, Doug ended up in the ER. So, you know, is he fine? Yes, but having that paperwork and knowing what we could and couldn't do was really important. The next thing I do is I bring along, and I'm sure you do this as well, but this is the, I've paid for the cruise, final document from my travel agent, but it also lays out everything that was part of my booking package. So in this case, it's Princess Cruise, we have Princess Premier, and everything is line itemed out like as to what we should receive when we board with that particular fare. I can't tell you how many times that has come in handy to go back and say, we didn't get X, you know, can you please make sure that that's taken care of for us? As well as it'll obviously cover your full agenda, port times and all that. Lastly, if you book something special, if you did, like for example, the Continent Suite Stateroom on Azamara, what does that come with? This stuff changes, you know this. Cruise lines change it all the time. So I like to make sure I know, what are we supposed to get? How many bags of laundry? What kind of, you know, spirits are we supposed to get to choose? Do we have any other benefits, fruit, whatever that's supposed to come? And lastly, and this one, you know, for us, if you actually pay for a beverage package, having this with you, this has also come in handy. So here's what was complimentary. Here's if you were granted a premium package as part of your booking. And then if you actually stepped up to the ultimate plan, all of the different brands that are supposed to be included. Because many times you just go to the bar and order a margarita, but boy, they taste better when they have Patron in them, right? So having these documents with you, I think, can be super helpful and help you make sure you can get the most joy and value out of your cruise. So I've got a couple little miscellaneous notes here, but many times, you know, we know people will string back-to-back cruises where you're staying on the same ship, but as well as we will put some type of land-based portion in something and then maybe pick up a cruise somewhere else and take it back home. It's really nice. You can just string everything together in here so you've got one master document of the whole trip. So that's helpful. Helpful tip number one. Number two, I indicate what currency we have in each port, as well as we will go through and do an estimate of what we might need. If we know that we're going to eat a meal in that port, if we know that we're going to have to pay for public transportation, if we have a guide that we need to tip, we will go through and calculate out for the different countries that we're visiting how much we need in what area, and we actually pre-order our currency from our bank before we go. We get a very good exchange rate for that. And then we're not kind of running around in port. We've made that mistake of using an ATM in port and getting nailed with fees because we didn't have a branch of our bank there. So that's what we do, and that's how I plan for that spending money. I will put just the base Excel template out on our share. I will also put up in the top all of the websites we use for planning and for what, so that you have just a little reference of that if that's helpful. We did fix the share issue on our site, so I apologize to those of you profusely who are trying to download the packing video or the packing document. That is fixed, and again, apologies for being new at that, but that will be up there for your use. The next piece that is not part of my file, but I think is important to mention, is communications, because it is something that you need to think about before you go. We're actually going to do a little bit of an experiment on our next trip. We're leaving for Japan here in just a couple weeks. We're going to try GigSky. We're going to use Airlo, and we have another Japan-based eSIM offering that we're going to compare and see which one's better, because we've heard a lot of noise from people who swear by their particular product, but I think it's not until you get to that part of the world do you know whether it works or not. So if this has been helpful, please subscribe. And if you want to be notified when we get that comms piece, just hit the notification bell and you'll get those as well. Now, the last piece I want to talk about is an app that I found called TripIt. And I know there's a lot of people using this. There's a decent amount of excitement about it. I am excited about it as well, because it's doing some things for me that I've really only been able to do spreadsheet-wise. So I'd like to tell you about a new tool that I am just starting to use called TripIt. Their website is TripIt.com, as you can see here. And I've imported, this is just a sample trip so that I can show you some of this, because otherwise it would have a lot of confirmation numbers in it and stuff. I am using the free version. Their price is pretty reasonable. It looks like it's maybe $45 to $50 a year for their professional version, which will track flights, and there's an additional functionality. But I want to give it a try first, the free version. And I will tell you a couple of the limitations I'm coming across. But if you've got a simple trip, this might actually work out just fine. They are owned by Concur, which, as you may or may not know, is a big travel company. And I do not give them access to my email. They have the ability to reach into your email and pull out any reservations that they see, but I don't let them do that. I am forwarding an email, and when I get a confirmation, to plans@tripit.com, and they will import it at that time. It's taking maybe less than a minute for them to do it. And the reason I'm doing this is because with most cruises, you get duplicate receipts. Every time you book an excursion or you book a specialty restaurant, so as you're working your way through your planning, you'll get an updated statement. And those duplicate each other. So I have waited until I have booked what I need to, and then I will forward it in. And this is just an example of a cruise that I have brought in. You can forward flight receipts. You can forward hotel receipts. I've had pretty good luck with flight information getting automatically imported. Hotels have been kind of hit or miss because they're not using the same types of systems. And as you can see, you can add different activities. I've added a tour guide, Viator, TripAdvisor have all imported just fine when I've forwarded them something that I've reserved. And all the way down to the end of your trip, your post hotels, post flights. You can add custom events if you want, just by adding a plan here. Any of these things. It is great with mapping. It will look up where you are, will find your hotel and address and all that type of thing. It's really great. I think this has great potential, I want to say. But the reason that I just can't quite use it for everything right now, first of all, I mentioned a land-based trip. Sometimes we'll have 4 or 5 days or a week or two or something where we stay somewhere. And as of right now, if they don't have some type of technical relationship with that land-based planner, in our case it's Firebird, they're not able to import that itinerary. And for me, that's a bit limiting because there's a lot of detail there. Somebody picking us up at the airport, taking us to a hotel. We might have a tour guide meeting us at dinners. All of that I would have to input manually, which I have to do in my file today, to be fair, but I will. I want to get to the point they've actually taken that particular company and reached out to them to see if there's a way that they can fix that. So that's one thing that's kind of limiting for me right now. The second is, I don't know if you caught this, probably not, I was moving a bit fast, but when you look at it doesn't put sea days on here. So if you look, there's just a gap between February 19th, February 21st. That's because February 20th is a sea day. So I have to manually load those if we've got something going on that day, which I mentioned earlier. We do Cruise Critic meet and greets, or maybe we're meeting with some folks to talk about tours or whatever. I like to have all that in. I put it in my file. I'd like to be able to put that in here too. So I've got to manually enter the sea days. And then the last one is just hotels have been pretty hit or miss. That should be easier than what it is. Even if I've tried to export, details to an email or a PDF, they can't seem to read it in. But I do think this would be a great tool for, if you're not comfortable with Excel and you want to try to put together something similar in an app. This is their web-based version here, but they have an app. It is seamless in between the two. And I can say, if you've got a simple trip, this might be just fine for you. I thank you for staying with me. I know this is a lot of detail, but if you're the one that is kind of responsible end to end for booking your trips and planning everything, hopefully this has been helpful to you. Hi.
Oh, hey, that was great job on the detail there.
Yeah, so you don't have to, huh?
Right, because I'm not good at that.
Yeah, right. So thank you for following along. I know it's a lot, but when you start getting to the point where you've got kind of complicated trips and there's a lot of detail, I find this brings me sanity, and I wanted to share it with you, and I'll share my tools, and if it's of use, have at it.
Yeah, and if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, and we will see you on the next one.
Japan.
Japan.
Thank you, everyone.